Am I going to die? Am I going to survive? What is my life going to be like? A whole litany of existential questions.
Welcome back to another episode of Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain. And today, a little different. You know, I don't have my wife Callie with me, and also I'll be talking to an iPad, and we'll have a special guest, Jonas Koffler. Really excited about you talking with him. He's a New York Times best-selling author, co-author of Hustle, The Power to Change Your Life with Money, Meaning, and Momentum. He's a stroke survivor and a passionate advocate for mental health. We'll also be cooking. Yes, we'll be cooking. We'll make a delicious smoothie. I think that'll also be good for gut health, and I think it applies to prevention of stroke, because we were finding out more and more that gut health can be related to stroke and prevention, as well as to improve outcomes. This episode is really special for me because this episode really talks about why I began this journey. My dad, I may have told you in previous episodes, my dad had a devastating stroke. Very healthy, brilliant man, and all of a sudden, one day he had a stroke and came out of nowhere. We thought he was pretty healthy, and his stroke caused him to be debilitated for the last decade of his life. So, this is what really prompted me to pursue kind of a solution for folks like my dad, so that we didn't have another situation that happened like my dad. So it's really, really unique for me to be able to talk about him. And let's talk about stroke, right? Stroke, my dad was not the only one who suffers from stroke. Every 4 minutes in the US, someone dies from a stroke. And now we have more research to talk about, is there something with strokes and gut health that really resonates or connects with this? And so I wanted to be able to explore that. 795,000 folks have strokes every year. And so it's really important for me to say, hey, you know what? Can we do something about our gut to be able to change the outcomes for folks like Jonas, who had the stroke, as well as my dad? Just to begin with, just to set the stage, what is a stroke? A stroke happens when you lose blood flow to your brain. Either what we call an ischemic stroke, where the blood flow decreases because there's a blockage, or you can have a bleed in the brain, and the bleed in the brain then results in you not getting enough blood. And either way, that lack of blood supply is almost like having a brain attack. We know about heart attacks, right? But a brain attack is when this happens to your brain. And sometimes you can have permanent deficits like my dad, and sometimes it can go away. But a stroke is a medical emergency and needs to be treated as such. So I think beyond just gut health, we need to be more aware that strokes are medical emergencies, and we can do something to prevent the complications if we act quickly. So without further ado, I would like to introduce Jonas, and he's going to come on, and I'd love to be able to share his story with you. Well, thank you, Jonas. It's such a pleasure to have somebody like yourself. You're a friend, but an amazing individual. It's not every day that we have somebody with your qualifications to join our show. So thank you so much for taking the time.
It's a pleasure to be here, Partha, and thank you very much for inviting me.
Of course. And I know we've been talking about gut health and how it relates to stroke. I know you had an unbelievable situation when you were 26 then, right?
Correct. I was 26 at the time, so it was technically, I guess, 23 years ago, almost to the day.
Yeah, and tell us about what happened for our listeners and viewers. What happened that day?
I'll try to paint a picture from what I recall. I went into work early. I was typically the first person in the office, or one of the first people in the office. And, I was very driven and ambitious and really believed in the cause. We were an educational startup looking to revolutionize and democratize learning. And I love the storytelling aspects of what we were doing and the methodologies we were applying, which is essentially the inverted classroom. But in any case, I was a product manager at a startup in Austin, Texas. It's 2001. And started like any other day, which for me meant multiple cups of coffee. And not very much sleep the night before. And what then happened is we had a team meeting, staff meeting. And so this is a small startup. I think we had about 75 people at the time, something along those lines. And it was myself and other members of the editorial team, product team, and so forth. And I didn't have any sign that anything was off until I stood up to present an update on the product I was working on, which ironically was a title on public speaking.
Yeah.
Right? So I get up and I immediately notice a numbness in my left arm, I believe it was. And then I felt a pretty intense tingling through my face and a drooping of my lips and mouth, a blurriness in my eyes. And at that point, most of it is kind of a blackout. I do remember, or at least have flashes of memory of a coworker telling me I would be all right. And then there are also, prior to that, I remember a colleague of mine, a pretty famous writer, who said, "I can't understand you." I was speaking, but no one could understand me. And the next thing I knew, I was in the hospital, getting a series of scans, and I felt like I was inside a pinball machine, right? You know what the MRI sounds like. And so I was trying to make sense of everything that was going on. It was intense. It was, for lack of a better descriptor, one of the most intense experiences I've had in my life. It felt like getting hit by a lightning bolt. And for lack of, I don't know how else to describe it, quite honestly. It's unlike anything else that you can encounter. But it was a jolt. It was an immediate shift. It was, am I going to die? Am I going to survive? What is my life going to be like? A whole litany of existential questions, and trying to make sense or grasp what was going on in my life at that point at 26 years old.
And so you said, then you in the hospital, did they tell you had a stroke, or what did they tell you?
Yeah, so it was pretty immediate. The doctor said, "We think you've had a stroke. We need to do a number of tests to try to confirm what's going on." And so throughout the day, I would get updates. And I tried to remain relatively calm. But what was terrifying is that I had lost vision. And so my vision, slowly started coming back. It was still somewhat blurry. One eye was a little worse than the other. And I was having difficulty articulating my thoughts. So to the extent that I could hear the thoughts and they made sense in my own mind, but the output, there was a disconnect in the output of what I was saying. So I could only utter very simple monosyllabic responses. Yes and no, typically. Yes and no. I would shake my head, and it was sort of that kind of interaction for the next couple of days.
Yeah, how did that make you feel? So I think that's called expressive aphasia, and I believe that's one of the symptoms and signs of stroke. How did it make you feel? You're 26 years old. You are, the day before, even that morning, that you were on top of the world, just ready to move forward. How did that make you feel? How did you cope with this unbelievable diagnosis of stroke?
Well, initially it was understandably a sense of shock. After the shock set in, there was a bargaining. And to help you understand my mindset, I moved very quickly from an existentialist into a true believer, understanding that there is some kind of divine intervention happening in my life and trying to make sense of that. Why is this happening to me? What does this portend for my future? Is this an act of humility going forward? Should I surrender? How do I possibly make sense of and wrestle with my aspirations now that I'm impaired? I can't see, I can't speak properly. I can't even sign my name because I don't even remember what my name is. That's the extent of what I was experiencing. So there was an immediate humbling, but there was also a yearning, like, what, am I going to get through this? Number one, what is that going to look like? And number two, am I going to have a normal life? That's what I was processing at the time, Partha, from what I recall. And I remember a distinct moment when I was able to leave the hospital. They asked me to sign some paperwork. And they presented it to me, and I thought, no problem, I know what my name is. And I raised my hand to sign, and I couldn't write, and I couldn't remember how to spell my name.
Wow. And so you're processing all this, and it's unbelievably shocking. And did and I think I know the answer to that. Did anybody, even in the ensuing days or weeks, ask you about your gut? And I'll ask a subsequent question. Did you feel, what do you think the state of your gut health is? And I mean, just from hearing you, cups of coffee, no sleep, I would imagine it's not great. But first, did anybody ask you about the state of your gut health, and what did you think it was, if you had a guess?
From what I recall, Partha, there was never a question about my gut health. There was a question about what my diet looked like, and obviously the two are related. And I would certainly attest that I was probably highly acidic. I certainly wasn't incorporating fermented foods and pre and probiotics to the extent that I am now. Part of this ties to, I think, a general recklessness or rebelliousness. I had what I would call an invincibility cloak. And that invincibility cloak felt sort of like a spiritual shield, if you will, that I can put myself through hell. I can go through sleepless nights. I can work myself at 70-hour, weeks, and one after the next. And I can smoke cigarettes, and I can drink a lot of coffee. And this is sort of the art life meets work life, and I can make it happen because I'm in my 20s, and I'll be fine. And so there is a cavalier nature to how I was living. And it certainly wasn't one of being mindful. It was really kind of a mindlessness. And this was the immediate jarring reset that I needed. So that's the way I look at it. But in terms of gut health, it was the sort of totality of my health. It was, am I resting? Am I making good choices about what I'm putting inside my body? Clearly not. And so those were the start of a recalibration of sorts.
And when I've met folks that if something tragic and shocking like this happens, it's a bit of a dichotomy. You could either succumb to it and say, woe is me, how could this happen to me? But you took the opposite route, and you said, I am going to take the bull by its horns and then change my life. Tell me first, why did you choose the latter? Why did you choose not to just say, woe is me, how could this happen to me? It's terrible. Because it's very, very, I think it's very compelling that you did that, but it's very tempting to do that. And when you decided to do it, what did you do? How did you change your life?
So I tried to be objective, and I tried to almost get outside of my body and the limitations of my consciousness. I know that might sound a little esoteric, but what I mean is this. As a storyteller, I try to look at the stroke through the architecture or a paradigm of, this is a 3-act story, okay? I'm early in my life. This stroke became inciting action for me. It was the call to adventure. It was the shift that I needed. It was the universe stroking me. It was all of these things that a challenge, it was a wake-up call, all these sort of cliches, but it's what I needed. It was the worst kind of medicine at the time, but for me, it was an opportunity to rebuild. And again, that stretches across and encompasses every aspect of my life and consciousness. So from how I approach work, to my caffeine intake, to giving up things that were harmful to me, such as cigarettes, to choosing to really focus on the power of rest and sleep, to getting back into fermented foods, kimchi in particular, which I had been raised on, right? When I was in high school, my closest friends were Koreans, and so I had the opportunity to try a lot of different types of foods. And my aunt, being kind of a health nut as well, and also a cancer survivor, she introduced me to a colorful palette of better choices, if you will. So it was resetting in that regard, then looking to building a future that I thought would be better for me, accepting the opportunity, being humbled, and learning to grow. I knew that my life had bifurcated. There was the Jonas pre-stroke, and now there was the second act, the Jonas post-stroke. And how could I make the best of it? And so that's what drove me, what led my thinking, my mindset, my heart as well. And it's been, oddly enough, one of the most uplifting and positive things that have happened to me. I know it sounds very ironic again, but it's true.
It's a great mindset. And those of you who are watching or listening, all of us face challenges, and this is such a unique approach to take a situation objectively and say, what am I supposed to learn from this? And how am I supposed to reset my life? We all have challenges. And I think you took a path that is, I think is pretty unique. A lot of people succumb to, to something tragic, and you took something and really changed your life. And what have you done besides, I know you've eaten more kimchi and really balanced your life, but what specific things for people who are looking to change their lives and maybe not to prevent stroke, but maybe it's to change their life in general for better gut health and better mental health, what would you recommend?
Yeah, so there are a lot of facets to this, Partha, and obviously I think there is a great parallel with the things that I was doing intuitively and some of the themes of the book, and specifically around nutrition. So it was really understanding nutrition at a deep level, and the things that would energize my body, help me to heal. And so that was the beginning. And then beyond that, obviously, I would get out and walk every day. So the movement piece was extremely important to me. Getting back into my body. So understanding that there's a lot happening here from the neck up, but we're connected to our bodies. And I think many of us tend to forget that. And movement brings us back into our bodies.
Can I stop you there for a second? Tell me how it brings it back. And I think I understand, but I want to see how it makes sense. So the folks who are listening, so you bring it back. Tell me what that means.
Well, let's think for a moment about what I described when at stroke onset. So the paralysis in my arm, my left arm, and my face and so forth, and then losing vision, and then the inability to articulate thoughts and express my thoughts. Okay. When you have that intense loss of physical connection, you will spend your life trying to regain that. That was my experience, okay? Movement, blood flow was very, very central to that, and I knew that. And also sort of understanding the neural connections, neurophysiology, and how neurons interact. And so the messaging system of the body requires proper blood flow, but it also requires a set of exercises. So it could be the fine motor skills of moving digits, playing music, for example, or it could be just getting on your feet and the micro movements of squeezing your toes and then moving into the lower part of the body all the way up, and then getting into more of an intense yoga type of experience, which I built into after many months. But for me, again, it was just grounding and centering myself, not in the head, but in the heart. And to do that, I had to get in touch with my digits and my limbs. And so there's stretching required, because we lose sight that we're in this body, and our body is a container, a spiritual vehicle that essentially that requires connection. And so movement is the way for me to restore that connection.
And we talk about the 5 pillars in our book, and you referred to it as heal your gut, save your brain, and we talk about the 5 pillars in spirituality. Yoga provided that spirituality for you. Tell me about that, and how. And I know my wife Callie loves yoga, and a lot of my patients do. Tell me how that helped you. As you said, many months later you were able to do that, but tell me how it helped you and how it helps you today.
So as I mentioned earlier, there's the pre-stroke Jonas and the post-stroke Jonas. And part of the second act of my life was drawing on yoga and other forms of mysticism for mindfulness, for mindful awareness of my body, to understand the power of the breath, to understand that I could actually not only learn it and practice it on my own, but also teach others. And that would be part of my healing journey. So I had the good fortune of studying yoga. I met my yoga teacher, I guess it was 3 years after my stroke. And in practicing regularly, intensely at times, I was able to give myself not only strength and resilience, physical resilience, but a confidence, a self-confidence that I am restoring my body and even to some degree elevating or upgrading from where I was pre-stroke to where I was now post-stroke. So I used that experience to teach other people, and I went on to teach yoga for roughly the next 7 years.
That's amazing.
And that was incredibly restorative because I had been given the gift. I thought it was my duty to teach others, my seva, my service, if you will, to bring that mindful awareness to others. And what is yoga really simply? Yes, it's a philosophy and it's a healing and integrative system, but it's really about moving meditation. So you're moving consciousness through the body and becoming more aware of how energy moves and breath work, and the benefits of it are immense. And so that was the movement pillar for me specifically, but there's also another aspect that ties into it. You can practice yoga on your own, but in many ways, it's more joyful when you practice with others in community. And so that was the other gift I got or derived from my yoga practice.
And so, and you're absolutely right in all aspects of what you described. We now know, and I describe in my book that when you practice spiritual practices like yoga, you actually change the microbiome. When you have movement, you change the microbiome. I would actually say that I bet you if we had the pre-Jonas microbiome and the post-Jonas microbiome, it would actually be, they would be unrecognizable. Maybe a few of the species would remain, but I really think you've also changed some of the features of your gut, and we now know that the walls of the gut, the immune systems in your gut, is also more resilient. I think this is all very, very true to what we talk about. If you had to give a message to folks who are going through struggle, perhaps not a stroke, but any brain fog, challenges with their mental health, what message would you give them?
So a couple pieces of advice I would offer people. I know for me, it was opening myself up to choosing a path of resilience, even in small droplets every day. Understanding that life is a blank canvas and that health is absolutely paramount. So the things that I would recommend are, even amidst intense adversity, health-wise, find those small pursuits, whether it's yoga, whether it's making one better choice about food every day to improve your gut health and to save your brain, that there are small things you can do. These are subtle. They're not seismic. We're not talking about changing your life overnight or changing your health overnight. It is a marathon. It takes time, but to be mindful about it, to be mindful, F-U-L-L, mindful of the possibilities, and to strive for that change over time and the recovery ahead, because it does, if you stick around, you're persistent, you are going to see results, no matter how intense the adversity is, from one day to the next or 1 week to the next. Over time, you're going to see that shift underway, and it is incredibly empowering.
That's wonderful. I think that's great advice. And if you follow what Jonas has done, essentially, he's changed his life dramatically from the stroke. And you can do the same thing to even prevent the stroke. Change your diet. Use some of the principles we talked about: whole foods, foods with probiotics, fermented foods, prebiotics, and the movement piece is critical, right? So we talk about, not only is it great for having blood going to your brain, but changing the microbiome so you could support your body and support your gut health. having community. I mean, if it means going to a yoga class, or if it means, having a group of friends that support you in your endeavor. I mean, this group that Jonas is talking about for his yoga supported him through his recovery. That's so important. And then underlying all this is a purpose-driven life. I mean, knowing Jonas personally, and then also from the advice you've given, having a purpose-driven life is so important. He had a purpose, saying, "Listen, I've got a challenge, and I'm going to meet it." And not only does that help you to be able to achieve the goals you want, but it actually helps your gut to be healthier, to be able to meet the challenges, so you don't have catastrophic situations like a stroke, or as we talked about, other mental health challenges. So, Jonas, thank you so much for joining us. I know you're super busy, so we appreciate it, and I'm sure our listeners also appreciate it as well.
It's my pleasure, Partha. And the one thing I would leave folks with is this, that I think the single greatest opportunity in life is good health and good gut health. And it is so worth the effort to put yourself in a position to thrive. And I also think it speaks to living from a place of love instead of fear, and that you are your greatest champion and advocate when it comes to health. People can't see how you're feeling inside. So you have to be proactive in making yourself and giving yourself the tools, the nourishment, the 5 pillars that are going to impact your health in immense ways.
Awesome. So well said. Thank you so much. Enjoy the rest of your day, okay?
You too. My pleasure. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That was amazing. Not only is his story that having such a devastating episode of a stroke at age 26, but his recovery and the gifts he's given to himself and others as almost a present to himself and the world is phenomenal. And I learned a lot from it, so I hope you did as well. And right after this, we are going to have a beautiful smoothie that we're going to create right here. So please stay with us. All right, we're back, and Callie's back with me, so I'm excited. So today we're going to be continuing on and talking about a banana ginger smoothie, and I love this. So let's you want to start?
Delicious, and it's packed full of all sorts of awesome gut benefits.
This yogurt. So we know that yogurt is filled with probiotics, and it's a fermented food, so I love it. And it also has lots of protein, and it's I think it's a good source of nutrition. So
yeah, I'm just going to put the yogurt in the blender here.
Perfect. And this is one of my go-to foods, bananas. I eat a banana every single day. Banana is loaded with fiber, and so it's really good for gut health. It's easily digestible. It also...
And is it not the most perfect fruit?
I think so.
Like when your hands are dirty, it's got its own wrapping. Like an apple, you're like eating dirty hands skin.
Exactly. You don't need anything else.
I think bananas are
put
perfect.
it right there.
There we go.
We got this.
Banana blender.
And then ginger. So, even for my pregnant patients that have GI upset, for those of you, or anybody who's pregnant who's watching, it's great for GI upset. It helps GI motility. And so this is great for gut health too. So maybe we can...
So Partha's mom taught me about ginger, putting it in the freezer, because it stays nice and fresh and nice and hard, and so it's really easy to grate. So we actually grate it right with the skin on, and it creates, it gives us even more health benefits from the skin.
Here we go. And then a little bit of chia seeds, about a tablespoon. And I love chia seeds. Why? We talked about omega-3. Omega-3 so decreases in gut inflammation. It also helps with your gut flora, so your microbiome is better. So that's that.
Awesome fiber.
And then honey, the last one to sweeten it up. And we can talk about it's raw and it's locally sourced. So it's important to know where you're getting your honey from, that it's raw. And so this is great. Honey is incredible for gut inflammation, and also it has... Not all honey, but locally sourced honey has good probiotics. So
yeah, and also it helps with even allergies if you know where your pollen is. So I'm going to just squeeze a little bit in there. Now sometimes it comes across a little thick, but that's okay. You can always add a little ice or a little
delicious
dairy in there if you'd like. So let's see how it goes.
Try it.
Okay, sometimes the kids and I make this and we put it in the freezer because we just freeze it up, and it's kind of like a little ice cream because it's so, it's thick and delicious. So Partha and I will have a little snack, and then we'll give the rest to our team. But I downed one of these all by myself. Sorry about that.
That's all right, no problem. It's good, it's messy. Good.
It's delicious. You guys should try this at home. Especially, it is really good when you freeze it.
I can
We
taste
make
the
it kind
ginger.
of like on. I love it.
I love the ginger.
So good.
Good. Cheers.
It's too bad we put all of our spit inside of it, or we would have given it
Give it to
some
all
to
of
the
you.
team.
But this is great
Next
for
time.
gut health and it's delicious. And the idea is that, listen, you can make food that's delicious and still good for you and good for gut health. So cheers.
And
Until
you make
next
it fun.
time.
Yeah, have a good one. Thanks for tuning in to Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain. Make sure you never miss an episode by following on Apple Podcasts or subscribing wherever you listen.
And if you want to learn more, get a copy of my book, also titled Heal Your Gut, Save Your Brain, available everywhere books are sold, October 1st.